Thank you. Good morning, viewers. We welcome you all to the Sabbath school lesson, which we are going to have for the few minutes ahead of us. And I want to believe that all of us are going to enjoy. We are going to have this session, and before we have it, before next to me, we have my sister, Drusilla. Yes, say hi to the congregation.
Praise the Lord. Welcome to our lesson today, and feel at Jesus' feet as we share what God wants us to learn this day. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Sister Drusilla. I welcome all the viewers and the congregation who are with us, and we are going to start our lesson. My name is Elizabeth Manyara. The lesson for this week is the roots of Abraham. My sister, before we start this lesson, I feel something itching me and really so much coming up in me that I need to tell people all over that there is something good in Kenhat. And what is this good? It is the health ministry which we have been having throughout the week, and we are ending it tomorrow on Sabbath. I'm welcoming all the viewers and those who are in our congregation who have not attended this for the whole week. Please, I welcome you. We are having treatments for the backache. We have been having treatments for other conditions, and we are here to serve one another. We have also information about the things that we are supposed to use in our kitchen to make our health perfect. All of you are welcome. What you can see before us, all these are bottles of cumin, ginger, cayenne pepper, the things which are around us and which we can use in our health. Just as a remedy, prevention is better than cure. Welcome to the health ministry, which is ending today, this day of the Sabbath, in our church, Kenhat SDA Church. So please, if you want to learn something, or rather if you have questions you want to ask, because we have been streaming it in the YouTube, please come and ask, because our doctor is here and will attend to all your questions. All of you are welcome. Welcome. Now back to our lesson. We are in lesson 6, and the lesson is from the book of Genesis. We are in lesson 6 about the roots of Abraham. Much of what we are going to learn today, viewers, is about the journey of Abraham. And this one will take us much from Genesis chapter 12 to Genesis chapter 22. Before that, I want us to read the key text, the memory text, which says, from the book of Hebrews chapter 11, verse 8. It says, I read, by faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to go to the place which he would receive as an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going. Now, knowing this, I've already said that much of it we shall learn about Abraham and how he was being called by God himself. We get from the lesson of this week that Abraham was called 2 times. The first time we get it in Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. And this is where Abraham was told to move from his own country, from his own family, from the people he knew very well, to a land which is unknown. For you to move from your own family, or rather from where you stay, from your people, to a land which is unknown, it takes faith. Is it true, my sister? Yes, it is very true. Now, the second call, we get it also in Genesis chapter 22, verse 2, which tells us that Abraham was told to go and sacrifice his only son, who was called Isaac, on the Mount of Moriah. it is not easy. My sister, is it really easy to sacrifice your only son?
It's not easy.
It is not easy. So it takes faith for Abraham to do that. And many times when you look at the life of Abraham, you will get that he is more of a migrant, somebody who was on the move at all times. When God calls him, on the move. When God talks to him, on the move. Any voice he gets from the Lord of heaven, he was on the move. And even when he has been settled, he decides to move to another area because of the famine. We are going to see it ahead as we learn of this lesson of today. Now, we are learning that he was called to go to a land which is unknown to him. If you go to a place which is unknown to you, for sure you are going to be a stranger. If we move from here, our country, Kenya, to Uganda, obviously I'm going to be a stranger there because I'm going to meet people who I do not know. They're not of my family, they're not of my community. Even the language is not my language. So I live like a stranger. But this man, Abraham, he moved because he had faith in the Lord whom he trusted so much. And not only that, when you read in Genesis chapter 15 verse 1, you will get, my sister, that Abraham was told by the Lord that God was with him. That is encouraging this servant of the Lord, a man of faith, that God could not leave him because he was to walk with him and shield him wherever he was going. And that is why Abraham is seen as a man of faith who is remembered when we read in the Bible, the book of Hebrews, the scriptures of the Hebrews. We get him in chapter 11 among the men of faith. Not only that, God covenanted with Abraham because he was going to be a blessing to many nations. And out of him, many were going to be blessed. And that is why we are going to walk this particular day and learn more about what he did. Not only that, my sister here, are you able to tell us about the Abraham's departure?
Yes. Once Abraham was called by God, he had to obey. This is where we get Abraham's obedience to the order given by God. In the book of Genesis chapter 12, from verse 1 to 9, we find this is where we get the call of Abraham. And God called Abraham to leave his own land, to leave the place where he used to be, to leave his kinsmen, to leave everything and move to the land where God wanted him to be. So we find Abraham responded to the call of God, and he had to move with all his herd, the workers he had, all the maid servant, man servant, all his cattle, and he moved. But he did not move alone. He went with his brother's son, who is Lot. They moved together. So we find obedience in Abraham by hearkening to the call by God to move from his place to the place where he was going to tell him. Though he didn't know to where, but he had to move. And we find this is a man of faith, just obeying to move. And we find when Abraham is moving, he's not going with all that he had. He had to leave even the culture, the way of life he used to be, he left it so that he may go to where God wanted him to be. So we find once he was to depart from where he was, there are promises that God made to him that he was going to be a great nation, he was going to bless him. And we find once Abraham was to be blessed, he was to be a blessing to others. That comes back to us. Once we have been blessed, we need to be a blessing to other people. So we find Abraham departing also. It was a concern to his family, but Abraham must leave his heritage and must be of what he learned to acquire through heredity, education, and influence. He had to live and learn what God wanted him to learn. We find that God promised is not just about physical homeland, but about salvation of the world. This idea is reaffirming in God's promise of of God's promise to be a blessing for all nations. We find this verb bless appears several times in the passage where God is calling Abraham to leave his place to the other, to where he wanted him to go. So we find Abraham was faithful and he worshipped a true God. He worshipped a true God who promised a lot of blessings to him. We find even in the book of Deuteronomy, we are told in 5 verse 29 that if we keep God's commandments, he will bless us. So this is what Abraham did. He just obeyed the command of God. Thank you, sister, because we see the journey was long and Abraham is moving from his area, and we find there are things following him. Even temptations came. What can you say about the temptation of Abraham?
Thank you, my sister. As I move to the temptations of Egypt, what happened there? There is something, my sister, I feel I need to comment something small.
Welcome.
And this is what we are being told, that Abraham was to leave his country, Ur of Chaldeans, which is also Babylonian. And when we get this word Babylonian, we know it is a confused, not straightforward country or other land, a land which is full of sins, which they cherish sin. And he was being told to move from there. Now, if Abraham himself was being told to leave that land, and when you look at it, you'll get that most of the prophets in the Bible, as you read Isaiah chapter 48, verse 20, most of the prophets in the Bible, they have told people to come out of Babylon. Look at John the Revelator in Revelation chapter 18. You'll get that he is telling us to, my people, come out of it, or that at the end of it you will perish. And this is what Abraham was to come out and live and move. By that way, we get that this is a man, Abraham, whereby the earth was to get it is blessings. And by that, now Abraham went and pitched his tent in a place called Bethel, which was in between Bethel and Ai. He pitched a tent. He was a man of God. After moving, he was pitching a tent. This is something you need to ask yourself. Do you pitch a tent where you are? When you go for a safari, do you reach somewhere and pitch a tent for God and worship him? But Abraham was doing it as a man of faith and a man who trusted in the Lord of heaven, my sister. Now, knowing that, it came a time when famine came to the land, and Abraham, the wife, and Lot, they were living there. But when famine came, Abraham decided that I'll go to the land of Egypt because it was raining there. They didn't have famine as their land, so he decided to move there. As he moved there, when they were close to enter the land of Egypt, he told the wife Sarah that now you see you are so beautiful. Hey, beautiful people for sure. Hey, there is a problem with beauty. We don't take care of it and trust in God. Now, Abraham told Sarah that you are so beautiful. What will happen for me in this land which we are entering might not be good. So what you do, you will tell them when they ask us that you are my sister. That is a lie from a man of God. It was not true. And when they entered inside, that is what they did. They lied. And this woman, having been so beautiful, she was taken straight to Pharaoh, who was the king. It was not good for Pharaoh, because taking this woman for sure, Pharaoh happened to regret later asking Abraham, why didn't you say she is your wife after being stricken by God himself? A lie has a cost. In that land, Pharaoh commanded that they may be chased out of that land. He commanded that his people may lead this team of Abraham and the wife out of that place immediately. Unfortunately, or fortunately, they left that land. Still famine was on, but they went back. As they went back, they went back to the same place where they had stopped, Bethel, and where he has pitched the tent. This man of God did not forget about God. However much he had lied, he had failed, he did not forget about God. What he did, he worshipped God. How many of us can remember God even when we have failed, even when we have committed sin? How much do we go back to God and still worship God? The man of God repented. Abraham repented, as the lesson tells us. After repenting, that is why we are getting him now ahead of it, being able to walk with Lot, the nephew, moving on. But ahead of it, we are going to see how it did not go well with them. But before that, I want all of us to understand that the genealogy of Abraham is the one which brings us the Son of God. And we are seeing that if Abraham failed, entered into sin, his salvation then was by grace. Despite the fact that he had faith, he failed at a point. So his salvation was by grace. Even as our salvation is only by the grace of God. And out of the genealogy of Abraham, as we look at it, to get the man Jesse, at the end of it we get David. At the end of it, that genealogy gives us Jesus Christ of Nazareth, whom we get our salvation. My sister, I want to ask you something. This was a man of faith who failed. Now, how can we be sure that he stood firmly on the side of God, trusting in him and keeping his faith even in his actions as they were moving on with Lot? Abraham and Lot. Are you able to tell us something concerning that?
Thank you, dear. So we find that after Abraham being fallen into temptation, God forgives. God is still afraid of this man, Abraham, who is his friend. We find Abraham and Lot, the way they left their land, they are journeying together and staying together. Many times when people stay together, there comes a time when things are not moving on well. So we find Abraham and Lot's people had a contention because of the resources where they were using, they were grazing their cattle, they had a lot of animals they were taking care of. So there arose a contention, and this is where we find that Abraham had to bring out his character now. As much as we've seen him failing, he's coming up again as a man who reasons with God and who brings the character of God, because character is not developed during the crisis, but it has been developed and now it has to be refilled. We find when there is this crisis, Lot's herdsmen and Abraham's herdsmen, Abraham stood and told Lot, now we have to sort out this issue. If you choose to go this direction, I will go the opposite one. So Abraham gave Lot the first priority to choose which direction he wants to move. So Lot chose eastward, where he saw there was enough water, the field was looking well, it was watered well, there was enough grass for his cattle, for his animals. So Lot chose to go that direction, and Abraham chose the other direction. So we find it was a good way for Abraham to show his maturity on how to handle a crisis which was before them. So it is Abraham himself who purposed a peaceful agreement and allowed Lot to choose first. That one we find in Genesis chapter 13 from verse 9. So it was an act of generosity and kindness, which was an indication of a kind man Abraham was. The fact that Lot chose the easiest and the best way for himself, which was a watered plain without any concern, it reveals something about his greediness also and character. So you see, he wanted something good for himself. But you see, at the end of the day, we find in the story of Lot, we see what happened afterward, how he ended up staying in Sodom. So we find the character of Abraham was refilled, which was of kindness and a lot of generosity. So we find that it's only when Abraham separated from Lot, that's when God speak to Abraham again. This is the time God is speaking again to Abraham. We saw him telling Abraham to move from his own land. They have walked, he has gone far and near, but this is another time God is speaking again to Abraham. To the second time, God is speaking to him in the book of Genesis 13. In fact, since this was recorded in the Bible, that God spoke to Abraham at the place called Ul, he told Abraham to look up and survey, let his eyes survey and walk. The land where he will step, where he will see, that's the place where God was going to give him and his descendants, and it was to be theirs forever. So God invites Abraham to walk on this land as an act of appropriation. Arise and walk, this is what God says. Arise and walk in the land through its length and its width, for I will give it to you. So God promised to give Abraham this land where he was able to walk and see. He was to give this land to Abraham and his descendants. So the Lord, though makes it's very clear that God is giving it to Abraham, it's a gift of grace, which Abraham must appropriate by faith, a faith that leads to obedience. It's the work of God alone that will bring about all that he has promised to Abraham to see. So we see it was just the grace of God which granted Abraham this gift of the place where God had decided Abraham to do what? To stay and extend. Because he had promised earlier on, he was to make him a big nation and he was to bless Abraham and his descendants. I don't know, my sister, if you have something you can add about Lot and Abraham after they have had a strife and coming up with an amicable, peaceful solution.
Thank you, my sister Drusilla. It is really self-explanatory. But there is this one thing I'm wondering about, and I'm still thinking about it seriously. This man, Abraham, he didn't mind so much about ingratitude. He didn't have any bad memory of the nephew Lot. This man, Abraham, is a unique man of faith, as the Bible tells us, because when they had strife, he told the nephew, choose. And the nephew raised his eyebrows to choose. Then he chose for himself the Jordan plains, which he thought that they were the best. And in any case, they were the best at that time, according to his choice. But you see, he chose for himself. It is not God who chose for him. He chose for himself. And this man, Abraham, is the one who initiated this agreement, the peace agreement, so that they may not continue having strife because they are brothers. How many of us can do that? Because after that, we are seeing Abraham in Genesis chapter 13. When he took his side, God talked to Abraham when Lot has left. And he told him to lift up his eyes and to see the eastward, northward, southward, westward. And he told him that God told him that I'm giving you all that land. Walk to the other side, to the width and to the length. I've given you all that. Remember one thing, that it is God who is giving Abraham the land. It is not of his own choice. But for Lot, it was his own choice. The self part of it gives us our own choices. But when we surrender to God to lead us, he gives us his own choices. Viewers, brethren, it is good to understand this. Abraham was told that the covenant which was given by God, he was to take the land which the Canaanites, the Jebusites, the Hittites, the many tribes which were there, the Gashites, which they had occupied. He was to take that land. But here now, strife has come on the way, and Abraham is being given more land and a better land by God himself. How is it good when we let God make for us choices and listen to his voice to direct us, brethren? Now, about the Babel collision, there is something we can see from this man Abraham. What I'm seeing here, this man, the first thing, to know that he was really a man of faith and he could not keep even a grudge in him, he told the nephew, choose. That is number one. The second one, now here, under the coalition, we are having this coalition of 4 armies, which were from Mesopotamia, and another one was from Persia. When we get that coalition, it was going against the coalition of 5 Canaanite armies, including the king of Sodom and Gomorrah. And mark you, where was Lot? Lot, the Jordan plains where he went to build, which he had taken, they were just next to Sodom and Gomorrah. As the city grows, it consumed him. So he was in the midst of the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Now the armies here are making a coalition in that they attack these other ones so that they may take that place which they did, and they took all the goods plus the people who were on the side of the Canaanites. Remember, Lot was one of them who was living there. But somebody escaped from that attack. It was a war. Somebody escaped from their brethren and came and informed Abraham, do you know what is happening? Lot, your navy, has been attacked. Sodom and Gomorrah is among the areas which were attacked, and he has been taken to prison. So he has been carried away to captive. I want to tell you, as a man of God, he did not think of the past. He did not remember the strife. He did not remember the bad things which came out of their herdsmen. No. He decided to set his army, 300 of them prepared, and 18 people well-trained to go and rescue Lot, his navy. How much love is this man showing? Love. God is love. This man has love for Lot because he doesn't remember the past. And that is why when he went to rescue Lot, we are getting this man, Abraham, we are being told from the lesson, for sure he is the true owner of the land. Why? Because from the beginning, God promised him from Genesis chapter 12, he is the man whom God blessed. He is the man whom God said that many will be blessed out of you. And he is the man whom God made a covenant in that he will be given land which will be taken over by him and his descendants. And many in the earth will be blessed through him. So all the land was for who? It was for Abraham. But are you seeing, these people, the armies who came up from Mesopotamia and Persia, they were fighting for sovereignty of land which does not belong to them, whereby they have made Lot to be part of it and taken to captive. He was in prison. But this man, Abraham, organized to go and help his nephew. He did all that he could. And for sure, he did not target all the areas of where these people were taken. But he targeted where? He only targeted and attacked where Lot was held as a prisoner. what kind of love? Looking for your own. What kind of love, brethren, are you seeing? And that is why we are being told that what Abraham sought for before he went to help, he sought for counsel from God himself. How many times do you go for counsel before you go to fight for things of other brethren, of one to rescue, all of other outside them? Do we seek counsel from God? We need to seek counsel from God. Now, what we are learning also is that we are seeing the courage, the confidence of Abraham. Great courage and also fortitude, which we are seeing from Abraham. It made him to save his nephew Lot. Many are blessed because of the influence which Abraham, as a man of faith, trusting in God, portrays. Many trusted and were pulled by the influence to search and know which kind of God this man is trusting in. Which kind of God is this man trusting and believing in? Because Abraham's kingdom was God-given. It was a gift from God and not from man. My sister, can you comment something maybe which I've left out on that area as you take us briefly to the Tides of Melchizedek?
Thank you. We signed, Abraham had to put aside his feeling about Lot, and he had to take first the feeling of the love of a brother, the love of his nephew, and to rescue this man from where he had been taken into captive. Most of the times we tend to look from the negative points of our relationships. How I pray that God will help us, that we see from the positive part, just saving souls and saving other people, other than seeing where we went wrong, where we had collision, where we were not going on right with so and so. So I pray that we ask God to give us direction, to have the eyes of Jesus, see the value of Jesus' blood, which was shed on Calvary. So we have the tithe of Melchizedek, which Abraham did once he realized that this was a priest, this was a man of God, and he had to do that one because tithing is a holy. It's a holy. It's holy. Tithing is holy and is divine. It's an institution that is set for worship, and children of God have to worship God through tithes and offerings. And we find this one even in the book of Deuteronomy, where we are where we have been commanded to give tithes and our offerings. I think, my sister, you can give us a summary on how Abraham saw it right to do the tithing at that time after going through what he was going. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As we move on, the tithe of Melchizedek, we need to understand who is this Melchizedek. What does this name mean? And getting the meaning of a name, then we need to know an introduction of whom we are talking about. And when we talk about the tithe, then we are able to understand why should we talk about this tithe. Now, according to the lesson, it is telling us very well, viewers, and our brothers and sisters who are here, that Melchizedek means peace. Melchizedek means peace. And when we talk about Melchizedek, this was the king of Salem. He was a priest of the Most High God. He was one who met Abraham when he was coming from the slaughter and blessed him. He is the one Abraham gave the tithe. That is Melchizedek. Another thing, when we talk about this man Melchizedek, there is something special which the book of Hebrews was telling us, that this man did not have a father, a mother, a genealogy, beginning, even the end. He was there continually. That is something, an attribute or rather characteristic, which is very unique on this man called Melchizedek. Now, he was a priest of God. He served God. And when we know that, he was God's representative at that time. That is at that time. Melchizedek was giving bread and wine. Why was he giving bread and wine? He was even including a juice, that is wine and bread, but this wine was not made from the kind of wine we get from which people take and they are drunkard. No, that is not the wine I'm talking about. This wine was made from grapes. It was a juice, and a very nice juice. And if you have never tasted the grape wine or other juice, try one. Not fermented. It was pure flesh. And that is why we are talking about this wine. So he gave out bread and wine, and he was serving it with that juice. And this one, it used to appear in the time when the tithes and offerings were being made. And that is why we get Abraham giving Melchizedek a tithe. We need to tithe. We need to tithe 1/10 of your what you receive, your earnings. That is what we are supposed to do. And that is what we are saying, which was a very good expression of gratitude to the Creator. Abraham, even to this point, he knew his Creator. He knew that he was leaning on God himself. He was trusting in God. He had a faith which was standing on the Creator, the God who created him. So that is why it was an expression of gratitude which he gave to the priest who was there at that time under this name which we have been given of the high priest Melchizedek. He gave it. Remember, tithe is a gift from God. Tithe is a gift from God. And that is why the tithe is understood by the worshiper not as a gift to God, but as a gift from God. Because God gives us everything to begin with. Ni nini Mungu akupati? Brethren, my viewers. Ni nini Mungu akupati? Ni nini Mungu hanipati? So I need to recognize my God with my tithes. I give it back to him, what belongs to him. I take what belongs to myself. And by that way, my sister, now, what do you understand? What is something unique you are learning from this lesson that can touch the viewers, the congregation, to see the picture of Abraham, Lot, and even this high priest Melchizedek in a manner to bring God's people closer to God in trusting him?
Thank you. We find that we have a lot of lessons we can learn from the story of Abraham, who is our father of faith. We belong to this generation of Abraham. There's a lot we can learn. We can see a grace of God in Abraham's life. When he didn't deserve to be recognized, God recognized him. Even when he has betrayed God, when he has said a lie. At times we use lies to defend ourselves, whereas we have God who can defend us on all areas. We have our brethren whom we need to love. At times we are blessed, my sisters, and we don't even recognize that we have a brother we can share with this love. We have blessings of resources we don't even share. But we find our father Abraham realized that he has to work with Lot. Lot, who was his nephew, they worked together, they journeyed together. And inside me, I feel Lot was learning a lot from Abraham, his uncle. Even the way he handled that crisis, we can see Lot must have learned. We need to learn from our elderly. Our fathers, our leaders in church, they show us some examples. When they are guided by the Spirit, we can learn from them. We find even the way is going to this other land, and the king, Pharaoh, gets himself into a problem. And this, when he realized, this is not a man you can joke with. This is God's servant. And we find that at times we joke with God's servants, and we don't know how God is working on them and what it can cost us.
Very true.
We are told never to raise your hand on a chosen man of God. So we need to show this respect. So had the Pharaoh knew who Abraham was, he could have not gotten into the trouble he got himself that night. But we see that once Pharaoh realized who God was, and it was God speaking, he acted immediately. How many times do we joke? How many times do we take so long to hearken to the Spirit talking to us? Pharaoh realized immediately and released Sarah to Abraham. And he asked Abraham, what have we? He didn't even want to get association near close to Abraham. So he had to send Abraham away from that land. We see the way Abraham is tithing. Do we take tithes very serious? Do we take it very serious? Let God help us to know what is holy and how to keep aside and know that we have been already blessed to bless the work of God and do what is right according to our God the Creator. Thank you, dear.
Thank you, my sister. Malachi 3:10 tells me the word of God says that we have robbed God himself. By what? That is what we ask. He says by tithes and offerings. How much do we understand that? But then, as we wind up our lesson, I want to say, because of our time, I want to say that Christ's church is a blessing. Its members are blessed, and we are blessed to bless others. God chose Abraham not only just to be a friend, but to be a medium of precious and peculiar privileges bestowed to him for the world. To be the light unto the world, to be the salt unto the earth. If blessed with truth and light, it is for those around you to be enlightened, because you are a salt and you are the light of the world. And if you are salt, salt is used for preservation. It preserves you. Also, you need to help others to be preserved by that salt. And that is what we are seeing from Abraham. We need Jesus more than self. May God of heaven bless us. My sister, we are closing the session. Yes, we will stand and make a prayer together. Close for us with a word of prayer.
Tuombe. Baba mwema, asante kwa kuwa umekuwa nasi katika fundisho la siku ya leo. Tuombe utuwezeshe kuweza kuona mambo yako jinsi umetufundisha. Asante kwa kuwa umetupatia vielekezo kutokana kwa wazee wetu wa zamani wa imani kama Abraham. Tunapoendelea kujifunza mfalme, tuwezeshe kuweka haya yote katika vitendo. Ukuu wako udhihirike katika maisha yetu na katika imani yetu. Tuandae kwa ajili ya ufalme wako. Makosa yetu mfalme tusamehe. Wema wako ututoshe sasa na milele, katika jina la Yesu tumeomba. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. I'm still reminding you viewers that please come join us. You and you and you come for treatment, because we are moving to the end of the Health Ministry Week. You will gain something for your family, for yourself, and for the world. May God bless all of us. Thank you.